Okay, everyone, welcome back to the final edition of the Below the Belt Sports last take through MLB redraft expansion videos, I guess we want to call them. We finished up all through the AL. We got our NL East and our NL Central done. And this is the final one. We're looking at the NL West. We're going to talk Dodgers, Padres, Giants. We got a little Diamondbacks, a little Rockies to talk about. This is one of those divisions that I feel is like super top heavy. Like you have two teams that like have kind of figured out how to win now, in the Dodgers and the Padres, and then the other three are just an absolute like hellholes right now. They're in purgatory in terms of figuring out what the hell they're doing. So I mean, before we hop in, just make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that other fun YouTube stuff. I'm sure you can ring the bell too if you want. So let's just hop right into it. First team, the way we've been doing this, just to explain, we've been going based on where they finished in 2020 in their division. So Dodgers obviously finished first, World Series champions. They're kind of in a situation where it's like, who don't you keep here? There are so many good young players as well as good win now players that it's really hard to choose just three in this situation. But I feel like the first one has to be Mookie Betts. 10-year contract, one of the best players in baseball defensively, base running, one of the probably the best base runner in baseball, which is I feel like is an attribute of his that gets really overlooked. Obviously, got the power, got the swag, got the smile. Everything about this guy screams LA, and he's just someone you want to hold on to for a really long time. Second best player in baseball, in my opinion. So I'm going Mookie Betts number one.
Yeah, I would Mookie too. He's actually locked up for the next 11 years, which is actually insane. But five-tool player, definition of it: hits for average, hits for power, speed on the bases. He's great defensively. You could throw him in right field or center field. He plays right field now. He'll age gracefully even once he doesn't have the range to be a center fielder anymore as a corner guy because he has an unbelievable arm. You keep Mookie Betts.
Yeah, so my second one, I feel like we don't have to discuss that too much. It's pretty clear cut. My second one was Walker Buehler. He's the type of guy that he came into the league and you're already like, okay, this guy just has command. And by command, I mean like poise on the mound. He looked like he understood what to do with every single pitch. The moment was never too big for this guy. I mean, he was pitching in big playoff games when he was like 22 years old, and it looked easy to him. It looked like he was supposed to be there. So outside of his stats, which are just really good, he's one of those guys that on DraftKings, they put his his strikeouts per game really low. So if you ever want to just hammer that, Walker Buehler over strikeouts, for some reason DraftKings doesn't believe in him. I do. Always hit that. It almost always wins. Regardless, he's one of the most talented pitchers in baseball. That Kershaw, I guess last year was the Kershaw Buehler 1-2. Now you can add Trevor Bauer into that mix. But that Kershaw Buehler 1-2 was just frightening for hitters. And he's my number two.
Yeah, he was my number two as well. I'll say it again every video. Looking for guys who could be an ace, looking for young, controllable players, pitchers especially. He's all the above. He's been an impact pitcher from the second he came into the league. He's already World Series champion now. He's a guy you can feel comfortable slotting at the top of your rotation for the next 5 to 10 years, and that's exactly what I would do.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it really wasn't this hard for me to pick their top three, but it was more hard for me to leave out guys like Corey Seager, Clayton Kershaw, Max Muncy, Dustin May, who I love, Gavin Lux, who's one of their top prospects, Trevor Bauer, even, who we hate, but I mean, regardless, he's still a talented pitcher. Julio Urias, who was amazing in the postseason. Tony Gonsolin, one of their young pitchers who's really good. But I mean, the third person, it has to be Cody Bellinger. I mean, this guy's an MVP candidate every single year. He won it just 2 years ago. Super young. One of those other guys, similar to Walker Buehler, he came into the league and was just like, this guy gets it. He has that poise in the batter's box that just kind of made him a bona fide star. 40 home runs plus. I mean, not your most average guy, but his OPS is unreal. Super talented. Again, high on charisma, which the Dodgers have a lot of. Fits LA. As much as I hate leaving all those other guys that I listed out, I mean, this is a great one of the best top threes that you're going to have.
Yeah, I almost forgot about Cody Bellinger, honestly, just because that's how stacked the Dodgers are. In this hypothetical, I was thinking even though Corey Seager only has a year left, you get out of the Trevor Bauer contract, which I think is a horrible contract, even though it is only essentially 2 years long, because I do think in real life that makes the risk that a guy like Corey Seager walks because they can't pay everyone at once. But you can't not take Cody Bellinger. He's been an MVP. He's got the lefty swing. Him and Mookie can literally be a dominant force in the middle of your lineup for the next 8 to 10 years. So I'll keep Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, I mean, and you got 2 MVPs and a Cy Young in there. Bueller hasn't won his yet, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him win one at some point. So as hard as it is to leave literally probably another keeper league worth of people out for the Dodgers, I mean, these guys are 3 no-brainers. It's moving on to the next team, which is arguably one of the most exciting in baseball this year as a team that's really going for it in terms of paying people on contracts with Tatis and making the trades that they need to be top contenders. And that's the San Diego Padres. My first one, the future of baseball is here right now. Cover of MLB The Show just got a 14-year contract, which honestly I think was not that good for him. I think he could have gotten a better contract. Regardless, you got a job for 14 years, so I guess you take that. You're getting paid a lot of money. Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, he hit a grand slam in spring training the other day. That was just like, that's unreal. That's unreal. Absolute piss missile. So good for the Padres holding on to this guy for as long as they can. He's my number one, arguably best player in baseball. Get in there.
Yeah, of all the teams that were hard, like I mentioned that the White Sox were tough to do, the Yankees were tough to narrow down, the Dodgers, we just had to make some tough calls there. I think the Padres are the hardest, but that being said, their number one is a no-brainer. It is Tatis. I said in the NL East video, of all the young up-and-coming stars in baseball, there are 3 that stand above the rest, and that's Soto, Acuna, and Tatis. No-brainer, electric in the field, at the plate, face of baseball type personality, just every baseball fan's wet dream of a guy you would want on your team.
Yeah, and he plays shortstop. It's I feel like that's like the position. It's probably because of what Jeter and Ripken kind of made it back in their heyday. But I feel like that's the position. If you got your face of the franchise at shortstop, he's going to be, kind of in that spotlight for a long time to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my next one, as much as I feel like this guy gets a lot of hate, he actually has been, since he came to San Diego, he actually has been quietly very, very good. Manny Machado, one of the best arms we've seen in terms of coming at third base. I feel like for first few years, everyone made the argument that he was the best defensive third baseman, and then kind of Arenado and Chapman kind of exposed themselves as being superior. But Machado's played very well in San Diego. He's lived up to that contract. He's been over 300 consistently, over 30 home runs. And for as much as hate as he got, because I think people were like, oh, he's not worth what he's asking for. Like, look at this year that he did. He wasn't great with the Dodgers in that year he got traded. I think that he's paying off for them, and his future is still super bright. He's still relatively young. I mean, he's not as young when he was getting traded, but he's still like 26 years old. Like, this guy is still super young, super talented, got all the tangibles. And I think he needed Tatis to kind of take over that spotlight for him so he can just kind of lay back, relax, and not be like this guy who has to be like a personality. I don't think that's who he is. He can just go play baseball and do what he's best at, which is hitting and playing the field. So he's my number 2. I love that duo. That left side infield is just unreal now.
So I think Machado is great. He's been great since getting to the Padres. I just think it's so tough looking at what else they have. The fact that you look at the Tatis contract and you keep the Machado contract, that could complicate things maybe in the future. It's so tough. On any other team, almost any other team, Machado is like a no-brainer keeper. But I actually didn't, just because I do like to prioritize pitching. And there's even leaving Machado off, it was tough to narrow it down to 2. The first guy I took was Blake Snell. He still has 3 years of control, $15 million a year. We just saw how good he could be in the playoffs and the World Series. I don't think he's a dominant, necessarily ace type pitcher, or at least not right now. But We saw the guy win a Cy Young, a lefty pitcher. You can put him at the top of your rotation. You know he could pitch in the playoffs. He's just too good for me as a pitcher to pass up on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like my two hitters. And my third one, I mean, I pretty much just went down this list and I'm like, I mean, who don't, it feels like the Dodgers again all over. But like, who don't you keep here? I love Snell. I think that obviously the Rays are stupid to trade him, but I mean, they run their own scheme, whatever the hell you want to call it, over in Tampa Bay. I love Paddock too. He's gotten a lot of shit over the past year because he had a bad 2020. That guy's uber talented. Yeah, you can't forget about Mike Clevenger, who's arguably one of the best pitchers, best like top 20 pitchers in baseball. I really like him. He's coming off Tommy John next year. You also had Jake Cronenworth, came in second in Rookie of the Year. Dinelson LeMay, Austin Nola, who's a top 10 catcher. And you got their top prospects, CJ Abrams, who's supposed to be this like otherworldly shortstop. I mean, I don't know where he's going to play. Maybe he's a second baseman, but you got Cronenworth. That's a problem for them to deal with in the future. And then you have the top pitching prospect in baseball, in Mackenzie Gore. And this is somebody who they think we could see this year, but they don't want to rush him because they want him to develop into the pitcher that he can be, which is Blake Snell, potentially like times 10. This guy has the potential to be one of the best pitchers in like baseball history. And I hate saying that when it comes to prospects because it's like the whole Dominguez argument. It's like if this guy turns out to be just a good starter, you're going to feel disappointed. But this guy has all the tangibles, and they want him to be at the top of the rotation for the years to come. Kind of leading this Tatis, this Machado, this Cronenworth, this Austin Nola, this class of hitters, and they want him to be a huge part of it. And as much as I hate leaving Blake Snell, and even someone like Darvish, who's just as talented, but a little on the older side, leaving Paddock off, leaving Cronenworth off, leaving Clevenger off, even, I have to go Mackenzie Gore here. I absolutely love his upside. I love pitching prospects, and I think it just adds another few years onto the Padres' windows if you take him. So I'm going with Mackenzie Gore here as my third.
I took Mackenzie Gore too. Like you said, best pitching prospect in baseball. There's a reason that the Padres have been holding on to him. They have high expectations for him. As deep as that rotation is right now, they still want Mackenzie Gore to come in and potentially be their ace for a decade. That was why, to me, it made it a little bit easier to leave Machado off because I did want a guy that's an elite pitcher right now, and that's Snell, and then keep Mackenzie Gore, who has the potential to be an elite pitcher down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I over-exaggerated now that I'm thinking about it. I said potentially the best pitcher in baseball history. I'd like to retract that and take a few steps back on that one. But I do stand by him being my third, and I'm super excited with that core three, Tatis, Machado, and Gore going forward with the Padres. But I mean, it's tough to leave all those guys off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, now moving on to the rest of the NL West, who I have almost a problem trying to find three people that I want to keep. We'll start with the Giants, who finished third. As much as, I mean, Buster Posey's too old. And it doesn't really feel like anyone else on this roster, like I really know who they are. Like there's some names that like I recognize, but no one that's like standing out to me. So I'm going to go with their number one prospect, someone who's supposed to be the second coming of Buster Posey, is Gold Glove potential, good hitter, is Joey Bart. He's their number one prospect. Like I said, seems like the Giants want to build around catching and just kind of have the field divert out from there. And they've got, once Buster Posey's done, they got Joey Bart ready to slide right in. So I'm going to go with him just because I feel like that's how they built successful organizations and teams in the past. So he's my number one here.
Yeah, he was my number one as well. I almost just thought, I mean, when you think of those Giants dynasty teams, when, they won 3 in 5 years, you think first of the pitching of, Bumgarner, Lincecum, and those guys. And then you kind of think of Buster Posey. I mean, they say great teams are built up the middle. If you can have a catcher who could be a two-way guy, we said this with Adley Rutschman, it's super rare to find even a Jorge Posada level kind of catcher. So you find a Buster Posey kind of guy, and that's what Joey Bart could potentially be. So he's already here now. We saw him a little bit last year, number 2 pick in the draft. He's got a 60 power tool. He was my number one, and it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. The Giants are very thin. The So I mean, my number two, none of the other prospects really excited me. I like kind of Helio Ramos a little bit, but I'm gonna go with Marco Luciano. He's one of those raw talents that the Giants have. He's kind of like considering the rest of their organization is not that exciting. I went with someone with a high ceiling as opposed to someone who's kind of like ready and a little more like concrete in what their abilities are. He has just a bunch of just like tangibles, raw power, raw speed, good arm, and just kind of like let's see what this guy can become. So just because I'm not too excited about the rest of their team, I'm going with Marco Luciano as my number two.
Yeah, I took him too. He's only 19. They have him as a 65 power tool.
Yeah.
You said just a lot of raw ability, which I'll take my chance on because there's really no one on the Giants that makes it, a tough case to not take a chance on this guy. He might be a shortstop. They said even if not, he's athletic enough and has a good enough arm to play third or right field. And again, there's just nobody on this team that would make me want to not take a 19-year-old with this kind of upside. So I went with Luciano.
Yeah. And my number three, I think, is a surprise, actually, just because I feel like we've been building around prospects for teams that aren't as win now. But I went with Mike Yastrzemski as my number three. He's just came into the majors at 28 years old, which obviously is on the side of a late bloomer. Judge came in at like 25, which people were kind of like, oh, that's a little on the older side. But I mean, this guy's 3 years after that. But during his time in the majors, he's been really successful. So I'm thinking that this late bloom is going to lead to also kind of like a later prime where he could be successful, into his 34, 35, 36 years, where these guys are just kind of coming up and making their own. So I like what he's done. He's been a real spark plug for that Giants. He's become a fan favorite over there. Obviously, the Yastrzemski name is famous just in baseball, and people have kind of gotten behind that, seeing Carl Yastrzemski's grandson be successful in the pros. It's kind of cool to see. Those different eras of baseball kind of coming together. So he's my number two. I'm sorry, my number three. Just for the fact that I think that his best years are still ahead of him, and he's still on the older side of 29. So.
Yeah, you and I went 3 for 3 here. I actually took Yastrzemski too. I actually didn't realize he's this old. This is going to be his age 30 season, but like you said, it doesn't really matter. You see it with guys sometimes where they just are in the minors for a while, break into the league late. We're seeing that with Luke Voigt right now, where he's one of the, probably top 20 hitters in baseball, and he's in his late 20s. So I like Yastrzemski a lot. He was really good in 2020, had a 968 OPS, and sure, that's only 54 games. But when you look at what he's done in his 2 years in the majors, that's an 161 game sample size, still an 892 OPS. And like you said, it is cool seeing, Red Sox legend's grandson come into the league. I remember in 2019, he had the at-bat at Fenway. That was pretty cool. So, definitely older than the other two guys, but I think a guy that can produce right now, and hopefully, like you said, maybe he just has a late prime and he's able to be, successful into his late 30s.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a similar situation to what you chose with the Orioles. I went a different direction, but he's kind of like a Mancini situation where he's really good, and maybe he's kind of got a chance to show these prospects, hey, I was in the minors for all these years. Here's how you get to the pros, and here's how you be successful at the pros. So he's a good guiding light for these, few young talents that they have, and just these guys are just raw ability.
Right.
Yeah. So moving on to the team that I don't even know what their direction is right now in real life, but the Colorado Rockies. My number one is I'm basing off the fact that they got rid of Arenado. Maybe there's a chance they hold on to this guy, and that's Trevor Story. I think that he is one of the top two shortstops in baseball. We remember when he came into his rookie year, he just absolutely mashed baseballs. Like he had like an historic home run record, and he's kind of kept up that pace where he's been a power hitting shortstop, been really good, been better than what Tulowitzki was in his prime, with the Rockies. But we just don't know where he's going to fall in terms of sticking with the team. So I'm going with him for right now, pending the idea that I'm assuming some sort of contract talks are going to happen. And whether it's a situation like Arenado where they sign him with the intention of building around him and then they trade him in 2 or 3 years, at least they can get something back from him at some point just because his talent level is there. So I'm going with Trevor Story as my number one, but I don't feel great about it because it's the Rockies.
Yeah, the Rockies are like a step above like Rangers and Pirates level disappointment where it just made me sad to even try and formulate this list. They're number one. I went with Herman Marquez. I think he's another guy. He's still relatively young, has a chance to be an ace of a staff or a really good number two. I think he's definitely a guy that would benefit from a change of scenery. If you look at his splits, hitters have an OPS plus at home against him of 116. That's at Coors Field. On the road is just 85. In ERA terms, that's a 5.1 ERA at home and 3.5 on the road. So he's definitely a guy that's suffering from playing in such a hitter's park for 15 to 20 of his starts every year. So he's my number one. I don't think he'll be in Colorado very long, to be honest with you. I think the way that franchise is trending, I do think he'll be traded at some point, either the trade deadline or next offseason. But he's a guy that has a lot of promise for sure.
Yeah, so he actually turned into my number two. And yeah, I remember when the Trevor Story talks were kind of happening, like Lindor went to the Mets, and you were high on the Yankees if they were going to do this trade for Trevor Story, trying to also package in Marquez. And I was like, I mean, I like him. I've heard about him, but I never really looked too much into him. I just assumed he was one of those young Rocky arms that it's like, oh, I'm sure he just pitches like a 5 ERA, but like in reality, he might be like a 4 ERA guy. Like, what's the big deal? But the more I looked at him, the more I really like his stuff. He's only 25, consistent for what he is with Coors Field. So his stats can only likely get better. And I agree with you now, the fact that like that would have been a great packaging for any team. Specifically, we were looking for the Yankees. But I'm really high on Marquez now, and I went with him as my number two. I think he's got a lot of upside, and he's only 25.
Yeah, no, I like him. In another case of us flip flopping our 1 and 2, I took Trevor Story. Under almost any other circumstances, there's no chance I would take Trevor Story here, and that's not because I don't love Trevor Story. I think in my mind, he's the best shortstop in all of baseball. He's super underrated. I think he's another guy where, like Arenado, he gets labeled as just a Coors Field guy, and you assume he's not that good, but he's really, really good. He's going to get a huge contract from somebody. It's just not going to be the Rockies. They're not going to pay him. I mean, they just paid the Cardinals $50 million to trade away their best player in generations. You can make a case that Nolan Arenado is maybe the best Rocky ever. Like, he's right up there with the Larry Walkers and Todd Heltons of the world, and they just gave him away plus $50 million. So they're not going to pay Trevor Story. In this scenario, though, I guess I just figure it out. Either you get a haul for him at the deadline, hopefully, or maybe they work something out somehow. I don't know. But this team is just so not exciting. I had to go with Trevor Story, who is very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. You're kind of just basing on the fact that if we hold on to him, at least I can get something for him. Or in the off chance that you wake up, maybe hold on to him and he's the future of your franchise, as you kind of hope he would be. Mm-hmm. So my third, I went with the prospect, and this guy drew Cody Bellinger comparisons. So I like that a lot. His name is Zach Veen. Left-handed swing, they said that scouts only dream of. And I feel like when you hear that, you think Griffey, you think Pinot, you think guys that have been super successful. When you think left-handed swings that are super sweet, super easy, you think of guys like that, and you're already drawing comparisons to Cody Bellinger. Outside of that, he's got a 6'4" frame that they say he can add a lot of strength to. Good power, shows the ability to kind of take off with the ball, good leverage. Yeah, just all scout stuff that I was reading, but like they said a lot of potential, good bat, strong body, and with potential to do more. And all those comparisons that I heard, I said lock that in, especially at Coors Field. I feel like that's Carlos Gonzalez times 10. So I'm going to take Zach Veen as my number 3.
I took Zach Veen too, quite literally, for the only reason that their roster beyond Marquez and Story kind of depresses me. I mean, you got Charlie Blackmon, but he's too old to really keep for something like this. And Veen is the only top 100 prospect. I don't know. I don't like his name. I think his name kind of bothers me. Like, I can't see like Zach Veen starting in right field in the All-Star game. I don't know what it is about his name. Just bothers me. But in all honesty, he's a very promising prospect. He's 19. The lefty swing. He was number 9 pick in the draft. He's got a 60 hit tool. So he could develop into a good prospect. I like the Cargo comparison as the big lefty bat outfielder at Coors Field. So maybe that's what he turns into.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's something to look forward to for Rockies fans because you're not holding on the Marquez and you're not holding on the Story. All right, so finally to the team that I feel like is the biggest shit show for the fact that they just handed over a huge contract to Madison Bumgarner and they just came in last place in their division. Is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Um, they actually do have some solid pieces, but I feel like outside of the 3 or 4 people that we look at, they're in some trouble. David Peralta, one of the better players, is kind of aging. And outside of, like I said, these guys, it's kind of trouble because I feel like they're in a situation where they have a high cap, but they don't have the talent to kind of match that. Um, Nick, I will say when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I wanted Madison Bumgarner really bad, and you were like, no, they shouldn't get him because he's burned out. And I was like, no, pay him. This guy is this guy is the future. Like he don't worry about it. He's gonna pitch great in the playoffs come playoff time. And he stunk. He stunk last year. He was really, really bad, and that contract looked so terrible. So I'll tip my cap to you. I was very wrong about that one.
I'll take too much for it just because his twirls were horrible. And I get it. I get why you would have felt that way. You definitely weren't the only one. But I also kind of saw this coming just because he had nothing left to prove. Like he could retire today and be looked at as an absolute postseason legend. Is he a Hall of Famer? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it because his, regular season stats aren't going to be necessarily overwhelming, but he literally just wanted to chill and live on his ranch in Arizona and play for a fourth place baseball team and get paid like $100 million to do it. So if I was anyone else, like the way like Ellsbury got hammered, the way even Albert Pujols is getting hammered just for being guys sucking the money out of these franchises on unproductive contracts. If there's anyone who deserves to do that, it's Madison Bumgarner because he is already one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time. But you're right. It has left the team overall in just a really shitty place, just not an exciting team.
Kind of in purgatory of, just baseball contracts where you find that yourself in that middling ground, but you also have a lot of cap space. So moving on to the picks that we made, my first one, someone who I didn't realize was actually as good as he is. I knew he was young, but I didn't know that he was kind of up and coming in the way that he is Zach Allen. So he was my number one. He's only 24 years old. He's been consistently under a 3 ERA during his time in the majors. And last year, he quietly finished top 10 in the Cy Young voting. So like you've been saying this whole time, you got an ace you can hold on to. I think Zach Allen does have that potential. I mean, he's not as flashy and exciting as some of the other guys who were like our Cy Young contenders, like Walker Buehler, like Blake Snell, like Mackenzie Gore even. Like guys who are like either young or currently here and ready to perform. But I mean, he's clearly getting the job done. I'm sure he's relatively controllable, and I think that being only 23 years old, he's got his best years ahead of him. So I'm going Zach Allen as my number one.
Yeah, perfectly said. He's my number one too. He's a guy that I expect to hear a lot more about, especially, unfortunately, for Diamondbacks fans. Probably when the trade deadline rolls around, he's going to be a popular name for the Yankees or even maybe the Mets to pick up, just because he is so young, controllable, and good. I think that he would get the hype of a guy like a Walker Buehler if he was playing for a contender, but he's not. But that shouldn't, steer you away from the fact that Zach Allen is really, really good.
Yeah. I feel like he's a guy that the Diamondbacks are going to hold on to too long and then just let walk in free agency. Like, I feel like they do that a lot. Like, they've had so many chances to get rid of Robbie Ray, to get rid of like guys like that who kind of stuck around in their rotation. And they're like, you know what, we're going to finish out this year with him because we're just on the verge of contending. And then they wind up finishing in fourth place and they get nothing for these guys that leave. Speaking of, I'm going with my second pick, Ketel Marte. He's become one of the best hitting second basemen in the league over the past 2 seasons. He's only 26 years old. He finished with a batting average 2 years ago, 329 the last full season, 389 on base percentage, 592 slugging, overall 981 OPS. So, I mean, not someone who I really expected to be the best second baseman in baseball, but I mean, he's kind of starting to move himself into that conversation, at least in the top 10. So I really like him. Again, only 26 years old and, a lot of upside. So I'm going with him as my number 2.
Yeah, he's my number 2 as well. Didn't have a great 2020, but again, how many times do I have to say it for all these guys? I'm not going to hold a bad 40 or 50 game sample size against these guys, it's the same thing as having a bad 2 months in a normal 162 game season. And the last time we saw him play 162, he was really, really good. Like you said, the 981 OPS. He was a legitimate MVP candidate. Second baseman, plays a little bit of outfield. He's a switch hitter too, which I really love. And he's still only 27. So, maybe he's got 5-6 more years of being an MVP candidate caliber player. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm definitely going to keep him around and find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now my third guy, I really like Alec Thomas. I think he's their number one prospect. But I was reading his scouting report, and he drew Jacoby Ellsbury comparisons, and I'm like, no. I don't care. I don't care if Jacoby Ellsbury had that one good year before he got paid for his free agency. I don't care. I hear the name Jacoby Ellsbury. I'm out. I don't care what this guy could be. Good for him if he turns into that kind of career, that beginning of the career. I guess, but I was after that. I couldn't do Alec Thomas after that comparison. So my number two, or my number three overall, he's their number two prospect, was Christian Robinson. They said he literally oozes potential, which is just a gross way to describe a prospect, but I guess
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting, but it's got upside. Obviously, it means good things. Just a weird way to write that. But he's been great in the minors so far, and the Diamondbacks are hesitant to call him up because they think he has an even higher ceiling than what they already kind of see him at. So he's been really successful in the minors, and like looking at it right now, he has a high ceiling, but they want him to do even better in the minors because they think his ceiling is that much higher. So they want him to keep developing those other tools and becoming the player that he think he can be before we actually see him in the majors. So that just looks like a lot of pluses to me that they think, similar to the guy with the Cubs that I picked, that they think that he can be even better than what he is right now and what his ceiling could be. So I'm going with Christian Robinson as my number three.
Right. I went to the prospect list for my third pick as well. I ended up going Corbin Carroll, who's their first round pick in 2019. He's an outfielder. He's got a 60 hit tool, 70 run tool. Said he won an MVP at the Perfect Game All-American Classic, which, like I've said before, I'm a sucker for success at lower levels, even if it is, just a tournament. But I don't know. I know nothing about this guy. I know that he intrigues me more than anyone on the Diamondbacks active roster, so I went with him.
Yeah. I mean, what else are we supposed to do? The Diamondbacks don't really excite anyone, and I feel like, do they even like have their games aired in Arizona? I feel like if you told me that like they don't have like a channel where their games air, they're just kind of like it's their ballpark and that's it. That's the only way you can see a Diamondbacks game. I'd believe you.
Yeah, you're probably right. Honestly, I don't know if they're on TV. Maybe.
Who would pay for the Diamondbacks to be on TV? Nobody. I wouldn't. If I'm a network runner.
If I was in Phoenix, I would because I'm a baseball fan. But if I was the average Phoenix person and grew up in the Diamondbacks were the team, I don't know. I don't know that I would go to that many games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bring back Brandon Webb. That's all I want.
Brandon Webb was filthy. Brandon Webb and Dan Herron, 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Wow, Dan Herron. Holy shit, what a throwback.
That's crazy.
He's really funny on Twitter now. If you ever watch,
he's great. He's great on Twitter. He's awesome.
Very transparent guy. All right. Well, that's the NL West. Really top heavy. The bottom three organizations kind of shit shows. But I guess hopefully they figure it out. Regardless, this does it for our MLB expansion videos, our redraft. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you check out the rest of our channel. Nick, anything else?
If you have any other suggestions for kind of video series, like this was just one idea. We're probably going to do some like MLB preview stuff, just kind of like divisions. I know we're probably going to start to have some people on. We're going to do different things. I know we're talking about the Yankees, the Mets, just league wide. We got probably some prop bets, just anything you want to hear about for the baseball season, because we're counting down now. We're under a month, so we're going to be cranking out the content as best we can here.
Yeah, me and Nick, huge baseball guys, obviously, kind of where we fall. So, anything baseball related, if you dare suggest anything NBA related, we will block you.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, not until the playoffs. We don't care about the NBA until the playoffs.
No.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Go Yankees.
All right, thanks, guys. See you later.